I didn't lose my family because of something I did. I lost them because of something I didn't do, and they never even asked for the truth. 3 years ago, at my cousin's wedding, one whispered lie turned me into a villain overnight. I went from being the trusted daughter, the beloved niece, the dependable cousin, to being branded a homewrecker, a manipulator, a disgrace, all because someone else couldn't stand the closeness I had with my cousin and decided to destroy it. But what hurt most wasn't the lie itself. It was how fast my parents believed it. No questions, no defense, no hesitation. They threw me out of their lives like I was disposable. Now, 3 years later, the truth has finally come out. The lie is exposed. Everyone wants to apologize. But I'm not the same girl they threw away, and this time, I choose who gets to come back in. The morning of Daniel's wedding felt like any other summer Saturday, clear skies, buzzing excitement, and just the right amount of nerves. I remember standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my lavender bridesmaid dress, thinking, don't trip walking down the aisle, don't cry in the pictures, typical stuff. Never once did it cross my mind that by the end of that day, I'd be exiled from my own family. Daniel and I were always close, closer than most cousins. We grew up like siblings. When his parents fought, he'd sleep over at our place. When I went through my first breakup, he brought me ice cream and stood outside my window playing a song on his iPad. We understood each other, always had. That bond? It was sacred to me. But apparently not to everyone. The ceremony was flawless. Jenna, the bride, looked radiant. She was never exactly warm toward me, but I chalked it up to nerves or maybe just personality differences. We'd never fought. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies. Until the reception. It was during the toast. I had just handed the mic off to Daniel's best man and stepped down to grab a drink. That's when Jenna stormed over, face red, eyes full of something I couldn't read. Rage? Fear? Jealousy? You need to leave, she hissed. I blinked. What? She looked me dead in the eyes. I know what you've been doing. Don't play dumb. You've been trying to sabotage this since day one. Daniel might be too blind to see it, but I'm not. I laughed out of sheer confusion. Sabotage what? Jenna, what are you talking about? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to her parents, to mine, to Daniel's, and said, loudly enough for half the reception hall to hear, she's been trying to sleep with my husband. I froze. The music kept playing in the background like nothing had happened, but suddenly it felt like the whole world tilted sideways. People turned. Forks dropped. My mother gasped and covered her mouth. Daniel just stood there, stunned. And I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I tried to speak, to explain, to deny something, but no sound came out. Only silence. And in that silence, judgment bloomed like poison. My mother walked up to me, tears brimming, and said, tell me it's not true. I whispered, it's not. She paused, just for a second. Then she turned away. And in that moment, I knew. It didn't matter whether it was true. They wanted it to be. Because if it was true, they had a reason to hate me, to push me out, to protect their picture-perfect narrative. They didn't need proof, just a villain. And I was the perfect one. I don't remember leaving the reception. I think someone took my arm, maybe my aunt or one of the venue staff, and walked me outside. The music kept playing behind me, laughter still echoing as if my world hadn't just collapsed. I stood in the parking lot, staring at my reflection in a car window, still wearing the lavender dress that now felt like a costume. I didn't recognize the girl looking back at me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Just 5 words. Don't come back tonight, ever. I read it 5 times. Then I sat on the curb and cried until my makeup bled into my hands. By the time I drove home, it was late. I pulled into the driveway out of habit, only to see a trash bag on the front step. My name was scribbled on it in Sharpie. Inside, toiletries, a few clothes, and my high school yearbook. They didn't even bother to open the front door. I texted my dad. No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the floor of my friend Danny's apartment, bless her for picking up my call at midnight, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, trying to figure out what had just happened. By the next morning, the phone calls started. Aunt Rachel, we love you, but you need to respect Jenna's feelings. Uncle Ron, you've embarrassed the family. Even my little cousin Hannah sent me a voice memo. Why would you try to steal someone's husband? Steal? Daniel wasn't a prize at a carnival. He was my cousin. He used to braid my hair while we watched cartoons. I changed his diaper once when we were 7 and 5 because he was afraid of asking an adult. We were family. And yet, no one wanted to hear my side. Not one person. It was like they'd all been waiting for a reason to turn on me. In the span of 48 hours, I lost everything. My family, my home, my reputation. Even my job, called Jenna's aunt, worked in the HR department and said they were reevaluating my employment due to concerning allegations. I tried to tell myself it would blow over, that anyone would step up and say, "Wait, this doesn't make sense." But no one did. Not even Daniel. The silence from him hurt most of all. One text, that's all it would have taken. I know it's not true. But instead, he vanished into his honeymoon while I disappeared from everyone's lives like a stain they couldn't scrub out fast enough. And maybe the worst part? I started to believe them. The first week felt like a bad dream that just refused to end. I moved into Danny's tiny guest room, which was really just a storage space with a fold-out cot, and told myself it was temporary, that my parents would call, that Daniel would come to his senses, that Jenna would admit she was wrong. But no one called. No one came. The silence grew heavier each day, like a fog I couldn't push through. Danny did her best to help, but she had her own life, her own job, her own problems. I didn't want to be her burden. I'd lie and say I was okay while secretly applying for jobs, looking for apartments, and wondering if I'd ever feel like a person again. I ended up in Denver 2 hours away, but it felt like another planet. I found a studio apartment above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and burnt lint. The windows didn't open properly, and the plumbing made weird noises, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, on a mattress on the floor, I cried myself to sleep. Not because I was sad, but because I was completely, terrifyingly alone. The isolation was louder than any scream. I didn't go on social media. My phone was a minefield of blocked numbers and old memories. One of Jenna's bridesmaids posted a long status about removing toxic people, and I knew exactly who it was about. People I went to high school with were commenting things like, "Always knew she was fake." My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't need to be. I started waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, shirt damp, stomach twisted as if I was running from something in my sleep. I lost weight without trying. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped looking in mirrors. I stopped being Natalie Harper. I became someone else. Someone who spoke softly, moved cautiously, avoided eye contact. I didn't want to be seen, because I wasn't sure what people saw anymore. I got a job shelving books at a local bookstore downtown. The manager, Grace, didn't ask questions. She hired me after a 5-minute interview and a quiet nod. She wore chunky jewelry and called everyone love, and she reminded me of the aunt I wished I had. Books became my refuge. I'd hide in the stacks during breaks, breathing in the scent of old pages and ink, pretending I belonged to some other story. I started seeing a therapist named Carla. The first session, I didn't say much, just cried. She said it was okay, that sometimes silence is where healing starts. But it didn't feel like healing. It felt like surviving. And barely, at that. Healing didn't come in a single moment. It came in pieces. It came in the morning I made it out of bed without crying. It came in the day I wore lipstick again just for me, not for anyone else. It came in quiet victories. Paying rent on time, saying good morning to the barista, returning someone's smile at the bookstore. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, like a bruise fading without you noticing until one day you touch the spot and realize it doesn't hurt anymore. Grace, my manager, became something like a mentor. She always sensed when I was unraveling and would quietly slip a poetry book into my bag before I left work. "This one knows something about surviving," she'd wink. And she was right. The words helped. They didn't fix anything, but they softened the edges. Then came Jason. He wasn't some knight riding in on a white horse, more like a guy with paint stains on his jeans and a backpack full of sketchbooks. He wandered into the shop one rainy Thursday, looking for a book on mid-century architecture. I helped him find it. He smiled. I almost didn't smile back. But he came back the next week. And the next. He'd ask about the books I was shelving, ask about the coffee shop across the street, ask about me gently, never too much. One day, he asked if I wanted to grab a tea after my shift. Not coffee, not drinks, tea. It felt safe. I said yes. Jason never asked about my past, not at first. He talked about his work, his sister's ridiculous cat, his fear of flying, and his love of dumplings. It was months before I told him anything real. And when I did, he didn't flinch. He just listened the way no one had in years. "I believe you," he said. Just that. I didn't realize how much I needed those 3 words until I heard them. He started helping me paint my apartment. We picked colors like early morning sky and dusty rose, anything but white. I hung fairy lights. He bought me a kettle. We played music on Saturday mornings while we cooked breakfast. We laughed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like me again. Not the girl they kicked out, not the rumor, not the lie. Just Natalie. I still had nightmares sometimes. Still woke up with that tight knot in my chest. But now there was someone to hold my hand until it passed. I wasn't whole yet, but I was no longer broken. And I was learning that sometimes, quiet love without questions or conditions is the loudest kind of healing there is. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, folded in thirds and tucked into an unmarked envelope with no return address. Jason found it wedged between the pages of the bookstore's front door when he opened the shop. "It just says your name," he said, handing it to me. His voice was casual, but his brow furrowed. I turned it over in my hands. Plain, cheap paper, no postmark, no stamp. For a second, I thought about throwing it away, pretending I never saw it. But something instinct, dread, or both told me to read it. I opened it slowly. The handwriting was familiar, loopy, precise, with a strange tilt to the left. I had seen it before on seating charts, wedding envelopes, bridal shower invitations. It was Jenna's. "Natalie, I don't expect forgiveness. I probably don't deserve it. But after everything that's happened, I need to tell you the truth. I lied. About everything." I stopped breathing. "I told Daniel you were trying to ruin our relationship. I told your parents things I made up. I fed the story to my bridesmaids, to my parents, to anyone who would listen. And I did it because I was scared. Scared of how close you two were. Scared he'd never love me the way he looked at you, not because you were lovers, but because he trusted you. And I hated that. So I made you the villain, because if people hated you, maybe I wouldn't have to compete with you. I told myself it would all settle down after the wedding, but it didn't. Daniel left me. 1 year and 3 months after the wedding, he walked out and never came back. He never looked at me the way he looked at you. And I don't blame him. I hope you're okay. I hope you built a life. I'm sorry, I really am." That was it. No signature, no phone number, just, "I'm sorry." My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. Not at first. Jason had been shelving books behind me. When he heard the paper drop, he turned. I just whispered. It was a lie. All of it. She admitted it. His face tightened. "Jenna?" I nodded. He reached for me, but I stepped back. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the counter, but the weight of everything slammed into me like a wave. I sat on the floor and finally let myself sob. It wasn't relief. It wasn't justice. It was grief. Because the truth, the one I had begged for, dreamed about, cried for, had finally come. But it didn't give me back my family. It didn't erase the 3 years I spent trying to put myself back together. It didn't undo the nights I couldn't breathe. It didn't bring back the version of me that still believed in unconditional love. And worst of all, they didn't even wait for proof. Jenna lied, but my parents chose to believe her. Daniel chose to be silent. My mother chose to lock me out of the house without a second thought. They had all the power to stop it. But they didn't. Because it was easier to exile me than ask hard questions. Jason sat next to me on the floor. We didn't speak for a long time. He just held my hand and let me unravel. Later that night, I read the letter again. And then I burned it. Because I didn't need her words. I needed my life. She had taken enough from me. I hadn't set foot in my hometown in over 3 years. Not since that night outside the wedding hall. Not since the trash bag with my name scrawled in Sharpie sat waiting for me on the porch like some kind of rejection notice. But after Jenna's letter, I couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't closure I was after. It was clarity. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted to look them in the eye and let them know. I survived. And I remember. I told Jason I was going. He offered to come with me, didn't even hesitate. But I said no. This was something I needed to do alone. I drove in silence the whole way. The same roads I'd once known by heart felt foreign now. The grocery store looked smaller. The church hadn't been painted. The bakery had closed. Everything was the same. And yet none of it felt like home. I sent one group message. I'll be at Riverbend Cafe at 2 p.m. on Saturday. If you want to talk, that's your window. 1 hour. I won't stay longer. I won't be coming back. I didn't wait for replies. Saturday came, and I sat in the far corner booth of the cafe, back against the wall, where I could see the door. I ordered coffee and didn't touch it. My heart pounded, but I felt steady. Steadier than I had in years. At 2:07, they walked in. My mom, my dad, Daniel. No Jenna, no extended family. Just the three of them, a triangle of guilt, hesitation, and aging. Mom started to cry as soon as she saw me. She reached across the table. I moved my hand away. Don't, I said quietly. Dad cleared his throat, but said nothing. Daniel looked older, tired, ashamed. He couldn't meet my eyes. I read the letter, I said. From Jenna. My mom nodded quickly. We didn't know. If we had known. But you didn't ask, I cut in. Silence. You didn't knock on my door. You didn't send a message. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. The weight of my voice, calm, controlled, was sharper than rage. You believed her because it was easier than questioning your own judgment. Daniel finally looked up, his voice cracked. I didn't know what to say. I felt trapped. You let me drown, I said. All of you did. My mother sobbed quietly. My father's jaw clenched. I stood up. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't trust you either. And I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to let you know that you don't get to rewrite what happened. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my bag, a photo of my new apartment, me and Jason smiling with a paint roller between us. I built a life, I said, placing it on the table. You're not part of it, and that's not a punishment, it's protection. Then I walked out. And this time, I didn't look back. They called the next day. Twice. First it was my mom, her voice hoarse, leaving a voicemail I didn't bother playing all the way through. Then my father, who never used more than 10 words in a sentence, sent a paragraph-long text about family, misjudgment, and rebuilding. He ended it with, "We just want you back." Back? As if I were some suitcase they'd misplaced in a closet and finally decided to open again. Then Daniel messaged me. Just 5 words. I miss my cousin Nat. I stared at that one longer, because once, long ago, that would have melted me. That version of me, the girl who brought him soup when he was sick, who helped him practice job interviews, who cried at his graduation, she would have forgiven instantly. But she didn't exist anymore. She was buried beneath every silent second they let pass while my name became mud. I opened my journal and wrote the words I hadn't dared say out loud. I don't forgive them. Not because I wanted to hold on to the pain, but because some things shouldn't be forgiven, not when there's been no accountability, no real change, just regret because the truth finally surfaced. They weren't sorry when they banished me. They were sorry now because their version of the truth collapsed. That's not remorse. That's embarrassment. I sat with it for hours that evening, drinking tea with Jason, the winter sun bleeding out across our apartment walls. He didn't try to change my mind. Didn't say things like, "They're still your family," or "People make mistakes." Instead, he asked softly, "What do you need?" I answered without thinking. Distance, peace, control over my own story. And so I gave it to myself. I texted my mom the next day. A single message. I've built something I'm proud of. You are not invited back into it. Please don't contact me again. I blocked their numbers. It felt cold, but it also felt necessary. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, requires effort, accountability, rebuilding trust brick by brick. They didn't want that. They wanted instant absolution. They wanted to skip the hard parts. And I've learned the hard way that skipping the hard parts is what broke us in the first place. So no, I don't forgive them. I don't need to. Forgiveness isn't a door they get to walk through just because they remembered where I live. It's one I choose whether to open. And I'm leaving it closed. Some days I still wake up and forget for a moment. I'll roll over in bed, hear Jason softly snoring beside me, sunlight peeking through the curtains, and for a split second, just one, I'm back in the version of my life where everything was still whole. But then I remember. The wedding, the silence, the letter, the cafe, and the choice I made. Not to go back. Not to forgive. Not to let them rewrite what they broke. And strangely, the ache that follows, it doesn't sting the way it used to. It's softer now, like an old scar. Something I carry, not something that controls me. Our apartment is small, but filled with warmth. Jason painted one wall, a soft mustard yellow because, according to him, it feels like morning even when it rains. We cook dinner most nights. We read on the balcony. We fight about silly things, laundry piles, tea mugs left half full, and make up over bowls of ice cream. I started teaching part-time at a literacy center downtown. Kids who've been told they're too slow or too difficult sit with me, sound out words, and slowly begin to believe in themselves again. I see pieces of myself in them. And maybe that's why I love it so much. I still work weekends at the bookstore. Grace says I bring gentle gravity to the front counter, whatever that means. I think it just means I finally feel rooted. Jason and I adopted a cat. She's moody and obsessed with sitting on books I'm trying to read. Her name is June. And the photo I left on the cafe table that day? It now sits framed in our entryway. Not as a warning, but as a marker. This is where I began again. I don't check to see if my parents tried calling from new numbers. I don't follow my cousin's social media. I don't wonder whether Jenna ever found peace with herself. I've stopped needing closure from the people who hurt me. Because I found something better than reconciliation. I found peace. Not the kind you earn by pretending things didn't happen, but the kind you build, brick by brick, after the world tried to bury you and you decided to grow anyway. Sometimes people ask if I ever think about going back. To the town, the family, the before, and I tell them the truth. I didn't lose a family. I lost people who proved they were never mine to begin with. Now, I have a life. A quiet, honest, imperfect life. And it is more than enough.